your overall experience has been as Mayor Pro Tem for the Houston City Council?
My experience has been exhilarating, challenging, sometimes burdensome, but at the end, very rewarding in terms of the totality of my 6-year experience as a member of City Council and 4 years as Mayor Pro Tem. And what has made it so rewarding is the reality that you do have the real opportunity to make a difference in the city, a difference in people's lives, and a difference in being able to change neighborhoods, to transform them into a better place for living for ordinary, everyday citizens.
Okay. Undoubtedly, there were challenges. What were some of the challenges that you all faced?
Well, I think overall for Houston, the two big challenges that we have going into the future will be managing our economic challenges, because generally there is an increase in population which precedes an increase in revenue. And our city has grown tremendously. Now we have to manage that growth, and we have to do that in multiple numbers of ways. For example, making sure that we use all of our dollars efficiently, moving toward e-government and bringing the advantages of electronic capacity and capabilities throughout the city. That will help save monies. That will help us create greater efficiencies. The other challenges deal with management administration. We have some 23,000 employees. Most of the budget, in fact, is dedicated to the payment of those employees. We've been able to, and I helped lead the effort and secure passage of, in fact, I chaired that very meeting that brought the greatest increase in the pay for police and fire ever in the city of Houston, some 18% pay raise. We need to do significant efforts to provide some incentive pay for performance for our civilian employees so that we remain competitive with the private sector. And managing growth, we have issues with regard to the quality of life, because one of the things that all Houstonians have made very, very plain to me, that Houston is a great and tremendous city, but we want to be sure that we increase the quality of life in the average neighborhood. That means parks, libraries. That means programs for youth, our anti-juvenile delinquency program for after school. That means making sure that we do things that beautify our city, stopping the proliferation of new billboards and trying to reduce the number of billboards. That means making our streets, our sidewalks, those things that make a city a wonderful place to live in, and to do it all within the constraints of the existing budget. I don't favor tax increases. I believe to the degree that we can make government more efficient while providing the services, we should do that. And in fact, I have on a number of occasions reduced expenses in my own office and in the Mayor Pro Tem office and returned that money to the city as a way of modeling and demonstrating through efficiencies we can still provide the same high level of service while at the same time reducing the tax burden on the property taxpayers. The other thing that I've worked diligently on is economic development, bringing more money into the city by virtue of tourism and other events so that some of the visitors to our city pay for some of the facilities and the programs and projects that we need to accomplish.
Okay. You listed a number of things that you have done on the Houston City Council. What is one of the accomplishments that you are most proud of?
Well, there are so many. We have been very, very successful as a District D council member, and I have had really three primary focuses as a district council member. I have additional duties as Mayor Pro Tem, but in terms of the focus of District D, one of the things that Mayor Lanier told me when I was considering whether or not to run at large was, would that be a better place or position in terms of being able to demonstrate our ability to reach out to the entire city, to represent and serve all of the constituencies. And he actually advised me that a district council member has that greater opportunity because you have a defined geographic area. You have a diverse district. In District D, we have over 187,000 residents, which includes the medical center, Midtown, 3rd Ward, Sunnyside, South Park, Montrose, almost all of the major universities and colleges, Texas Southern University, the University of Houston, Rice University, the University of St. Thomas, the Houston Community College, are all within District D, as well as the Museum District. So to be able to demonstrate to people with that diversity that we can represent the entire city and in fact provide the services that they prioritize that they need for their district. So my first priority as a member of the City Council was to provide excellent constituent services. So we designed a special constituent service system. When my office is called, we in fact document their concern or their complaint in writing. We send a letter to that constituent indicating the action that we've taken. We enter it into our computer database, and we write a second letter to the department that is involved, and we require that department to write a letter to the citizen indicating what their concern or issue is and how they plan to address it. So we create a paper trail, so to speak, and a computerized database so we can evaluate the effect and responsiveness of those departments. We don't lose any concern or issue once it's brought into our system, and the constituent themselves receives a letter from my office and from the department indicating the action that's been taken. That has, and we can do that from the very first day that we took office up until today. And so rather than citizens saying that we've called, we've talked, we've asked, nothing has happened, we don't know what's happening, we've created a system, a seamless system that provides, in fact, accountability and demonstrates that the responsiveness to the citizens' concern has been addressed. The second thing I've done, in the course of organizing the district in the beginning, and the district is already organized in terms of civic clubs and civic leaders, we have had the largest turnout at every capital improvement meeting that we've convened since our very first back in 1996. We asked each neighborhood, each civic club, to write out a list of what they think are the priorities for their neighborhood or for their community, and to prioritize those, be it 1 through 100 or 1 through 10. And every year, we manage to accomplish, within budget, one of the top 5 things that they have determined that also makes sense technically to our employees and staff professionals, and complete it. So every year, the citizens see the demonstrated reality of one of their major priorities being completed within a year. And so in 5 years, 5 major accomplishments that the residents themselves have desired and sought to be. The third priority in the district has been economic empowerment, economic development. We've done that by using certain special tools and instruments that we have available to us as members of council and city government. For example, the tax increment reinvestment zone, which is an instrument which allows us to use public monies for public improvements to stimulate economic growth and development and commercial growth and development. We have 4 tax increment reinvestment zones in District D, more than any other city council district. The Alameda OST TERS, the South Post Oak TERS, the Midtown TERS, the 4th Ward TERS, and all of them have been among the most successful within District D. In the South Post Oak TERS, Corinthian Point is a development with a community development corporation to provide over 500 affordable homes, brand new single-family homes built from the ground in a planned neighborhood that will include a family life center, a youth activity center, gymnasium, counseling, and a retail component. This is in the Hiram-Clark South Post Oak area. In Alameda OST, zone number 7, we have brought together the best minds and best practices of all the other TERSs. And we have created, and we're seeing manifest now for completion this year, the first phase of that, which is the reconstruction and redevelopment of Alameda. On that street are 7 art galleries. We've seen a total renovation of old dilapidated property that was to be torn down into new commercial, executive business offices, a candle shop, an art gallery, a custom shirt and suit shop, and a coffee house. These are the kinds of events that help build a community. And it was done in collaboration with the Third Ward Redevelopment Authority, the Cloth, and the business community and property owners of that neighborhood. There will be a first-class Little League softball field that's being built. The brand new postal service substation is on that same street. So now we have an anchor, we have institutional bases, we have youth programs, and more importantly, we have commercial redevelopment along that corridor. That has spurred some $200 million of commercial retail redevelopment in that community. In Midtown, Midtown is our most successful tax increment reinvestment zone. The one in Fourth Ward will allow us to use that instrument to make sure that Fourth Ward is not gentrified. When initially the Fourth Ward Allen Parkway Village issue came up, plans were developed by non-indigenous members, and essentially the effort was to sell Allen Parkway Village and to disperse those residents all over the city. The Freedmanstown, which is the original name of the Fourth Ward, has a tremendous amount of historical and cultural value for our city. What we did was bring together a coalition of the indigenous property owners. About 5% of the land is owned by African Americans, most of that by churches. We brought those churches together. Each one of them formed CDCs, so we have 4 community development corporations by African American churches. They are building 200 affordable single-family homes. We invested, the city, $3.2 million of city funds to provide the monies to buy down the cost of the lots so that this could be homes bought by low and moderate income families. Allen Parkway Village has been preserved, some 500 units, 300 which are brand new, 250 which are have been renovated so as to retain some of the historical character. Andrew Street, where freedmen laid the bricks, will be renovated with the same bricks built hundreds of years ago by those freedmen. 50 row houses will be renovated, so that will become an historical corridor, and there will be not a museum, but an archive institute connected with our library system so we can retain that history, and another 100 units of multifamily housing built by the Housing Authority. So at the end of the day, we've been able to develop a joint plan of the residents and the private sector with regard to the economics that will actually double the number of low and moderate income families that were living in Freedmanstown, the Fourth Ward, before I came to office to now. That was probably the most difficult project to actually bring to fruition and completion. It had been an area of dilapidated, low-income housing for people who can only pay about $200 a month rent, so the economics didn't work, and we found a way to do it in such a way that poor families can own homes and maintain the character of that neighborhood with mixed income development that in fact is economically sound and at the same time allows commercial development to go forward.
Sorry about that.
It's okay, no problem. Well, one of the campaign themes when I first was elected was to be the guardian and the steward of District D in the city of Houston. And so my efforts have been to protect those who often have been marginalized by the larger community, and to build coalitions and alliances, and to stimulate and make sure that those disadvantaged businesses, women and minority-owned firms and small firms have the real reality of being able to compete and earn city dollars. And we have successfully done that. I chair the Women and Minority-Owned Business Enterprise Committee, and through those efforts and the modifications that we made by amending the ordinance to include people who are disabled, who had often been forgotten, people who own businesses who happen to be disabled, by including a graduation program so that once those small and women and minority-owned businesses in fact become very successful, then they are graduated out of the program, which then allows us to meet our goal with new small businesses and new women and minority-owned businesses to be able to reach those goals. Literally, hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars have been earned by these small and women and minority-owned businesses in such a way now that they feel that they are stakeholders in the city, and they join with us to build the city, and they feel very much a part of the city. There's more work to be done. Certainly it's not all over, but we have made major strides in developing those small businesses, opening it up to any small and emerging businesses, and assuring that women and minority-owned businesses have a fair share of a commitment to compete to earn those city dollars. We also were asked by the director of the health department and the mayor to chair the HIV/AIDS task force effort in the city. We have, unfortunately, an epidemic, which is part of the pandemic of HIV and AIDS in the African American community. And we have been recognized by the National Planning Group of having a model program of best practices of any major city in the United States. We're talking about a very difficult problem in which you really have to shift the paradigm of how people deal with issues of intimacy, and how they do that in such a way as to stop an epidemic, and to regardless of what their preferences or habits are, to do so in such a safe way so that we can end the epidemic. We also have changed the way we fund those projects so that the overwhelming majority of the money that is secured through federal grants by the city is given right back out to those community-based organizations to implement the program. We also developed a special HIV/AIDS training institute where we assembled from all over the United States the best programs, projects, and models, and trained in an all-day training session these small and community-based organizations, and equipped them with the models, CD-ROMs, videos, printed materials, so they themselves could go out, in addition to the testing and other services that we provide through the City of Houston Health Department.
So when people think of you, Don Boney, what do you want them to think of, now that you are, this is what you're at?
Since I reached adulthood, even in college, I made a commitment toward public service. So when they see me, I hope they understand that I am a public servant and an advocate particularly for those who've been marginalized and often been disadvantaged, and someone who has demonstrated the ability to be a coalition builder, to develop consensus, and to mediate and to solve the tough problems. Many of the very, very difficult problems that we have in terms of balancing revenues and dealing with major issues that any city government is going to have. You never solve all the problems of all the people, but I'm a problem solver and a consensus builder. And we believe, and I want to thank my staff because it could not be done, we believe we have the best, most excellent staff that has ever been assembled in any council office. And because of their work and their dedication, we don't see this as a 9-to-5 job. We see it as a mission. And therefore, we have done above and beyond what is the normal course of work. And I want to thank my colleagues on City Council. Although we sometimes have partisan disputes and although we sometimes have different methods of approach, I fully believe that all 15 members of council and the mayor are committed to this city. And we must model for the city the kind of leadership and new vision that the city requires. What our long-term objective has been is to build Houston into a world-class city. Already, our port is the #1 port in the city of Houston. We bring in more foreign tonnage from more goods from more nations than any city in the United States. That includes New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. We are an east-west access corridor. With the development of I-69, we'll become a north-south access corridor, which means as a transshipment point, there's no city more important than Houston. With NASA and Rice, we have a technology corridor, which means among our scientists and our technical people, we in fact compete with every major effort in technology in the United States. All space flight is controlled by Houston. We are, of course, the energy capital of the world, which means everything that's related to oil and energy is in one way or another connected to or in fact controlled by virtue of this being the energy capital of the world. We are the capital of the medical center. The largest medical center in the world is the Texas Medical Center, which happens to reside in District D, which means, and we're on the cutting edge of that in terms of research and development. So that means we have the best medical services in the world. And what we now have to do is not just be a business destination as we are as Continental Airlines, which is our hub airline, is also be a tourist destination. We're probably the best kept secret of any major city in the United States in that we have the highest quality of life for the least cost of living of any major city in the United States. And our tax rate is among the lowest tax rates. In fact, it is the lowest tax rate of any major city. And I believe as we go forward and we compete for Olympic 2012, I believe we will succeed and we will achieve selection for the 2012 Olympics, which will generate $4 billion of extra money outside of the citizens of Houston. We have the largest, most state-of-the-art venues. We have the lowest crime rate that we've had since 1966. We have all of the facilities. So in essence, there's no city in the United States that can really compete. We have the financing in place, and George DeMontron and Susan Bandy have done an excellent job. And so I would say within this decade, as we continue to come together as a city, to include all the people of the city, to make all of the citizens realize that we are being good stewards of their resources, that we're efficiently and more effectively running city government and bringing our city together, we will be recognized as the #1 city in the United States, a world-class city, bar none, and we will achieve our rightful place in history as a place for families, as a place for businesses to locate, and where opportunities abound. We've diversified our economy so that our economy is not just dependent on the energy sector. And so we've been able to withstand the ups and downs of the national economy despite that, because of the careful, excellent planning that we've done with regard to fiscal matters. You know, I serve on every city council committee that has anything to do with money in the city. I asked Mayor Lanier to appoint me to those committees, and he asked why, and kind of chuckled. And I said, Mayor, because if you understand the money, you'll understand everything else. And if you don't understand the finances of your municipal government, it really doesn't matter what you understand, because you won't be able to get it done. And so I've had the privilege of serving on all of the city's city council committees that have anything to do with finance. And that has given me a great deal of experience and wealth in being able to understand all of the financial instruments and structures, budgeting, budget strategies, and the way to manage city finances in such a way that's effective as well as efficient. And finally, another major initiative I had, still have, is international development trade. This is another way that we bring new revenue into the city. I chair the City Council Committee for international trade with Africa and the Caribbean. I've led 5 business development missions into Africa that has resulted in jobs and business growth in Houston, Texas. And so with a city as diverse as Houston, I think that there are over 72 different languages in Houston. We have an increase in the number of consulates that have been located in Houston. I met with the ambassador of the United States ambassador from South Africa to the States just last evening. We have sent a port delegation to South Africa. Again, we create wealth, we build economic opportunities, and we recognize the diversity of Houston, and we then see diversity as an asset. So our city, more than any other major city, is not one that's torn apart by our differentness, but one that comes together in unity to build the city into an even greater city, and in fact have a city that is whole. Our police department is now recognized and well respected as one of the best departments in the city through the neighborhood-oriented policing concept of the mayor. And now we're advancing that into the neighborhoods so that the neighborhoods and the civic groups see themselves as partners with the city, not at cross purposes with the city. And plans are being developed in conjunction with the neighborhoods in such a way that the neighborhood then ratifies what it is that our professional technical people say. And then we get a plan that makes sense and also a project that is protected and enhanced by those neighbors themselves.
Okay. What's next for you?
As I said in the beginning, my life is committed to public service. So I will always be involved in some form of public service in the future. I also believe in collaborative, collective leadership. So I think that the decisions that I make about my future, politically or otherwise, is one that needs to be made in a collaborative effort. My church has asked me to join the senior management team of my church. I'm quite proud. I was ordained as a Baptist minister in 1981 by Pastor Bill Lawson at Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church. So I'm very pleased to be able to be working very, very closely in the management efforts, the senior management efforts of Wheeler Avenue, because Pastor Lawson's idea about the church, his vision for the church, is that the church reach out beyond the boundaries of the sanctuary and make sure that they become connected to and a part of the redevelopment of the community. I'll also probably do some consulting, but I will keep a close eye on City Hall. And when the community and I sit down and talk about if there are other ways that I can serve the citizens of Houston in either an elected capacity or other capacity, I will certainly consider it and will likely continue to play a role in Houston as an advocate for those who are marginalized, as a convener of those who need to be brought into alliance and coalition, and the development and building of consensus for the benefit of all of the citizens of Houston. The accomplishment that I always say is constituent services. The fact that we have developed relationships so strong within the district that our civic leaders look at us as partners and not someone to complain to. Because what I did in the process of setting up the computerized system in which they have the paper trail and all that, is to explain to them how city government works. Because it's important, if they understand how it works, then they are more effective in advocating with me and all of the other council members and the mayor what it is that they want. Secondly, there are some specific areas that I've dealt with regard to the budget. For example, Houston's annual city budget is $2.7 billion with a $1.4 billion operating budget, 23,000 city employees, and in excess of that, a $4.3 billion capital development, capital construction budget, and a total debt of $6.3 billion. I am one of 15 members of a board that manages that money. This is city government is essentially a major corporation with corporate assets and corporate debt that have to be managed corporate debt that has to be managed efficiently and effectively. We've done that. In fact, we've been a major part of the development of the budget strategy and budget plans over the course of the last 2 years. Secondly, in my own offices, I manage a budget, an annual budget of $292,000. That's the District D budget. And in the Pro Tem office, I manage a separate budget of $334,000 for the past 4 years. We've never gone over budget. We've been able to raise and keep our salaries somewhat competitive while at the same time returning some part of that back to the city budget. Additionally, we have renovated every library in District D except one, and that's the Clayton Branch Library, which is our genealogical library, which we have already reserved the funds for out of this CIP to finish the renovation of that budget, of that library. So all of the libraries in District D have been addressed. All of the libraries, start again. All of the libraries in District D have been renovated except one, which is the Clayton Branch Library, which is our genealogical library in the Museum District. And we have already secured the funds in the CIP budget for its complete renovation coming up in the next years. So all of the libraries in District D have been taken care of. All of the parks in District D have been renovated as well. In fact, some of the significant numbers that I just wanted to point out is $2.5 million into Sunnyside Park. Sunnyside Park is a super park. We've had a complete renovation of that facility. The Blue Ridge Park, Blue Ridge Park was part of a land swap where we took 23 additional acres that was increased above the parkland that we already had, swapping with Fort Bend County to provide affordable housing and the additional acreage for the park. And so we have a park plan that enhances Blue Ridge Park. This is in Fort Bend, which had largely been ignored. It's one of the annexed areas. And now not only have we done that, but we've now taken that other land and swapped that, so we now have 400 affordable units of housing, single-family housing, that's also going to be put there. In addition to Sunnyside Park and $2.4 million, $400,000 for a beach park, another $339,000 for improvements in Cleveland Park, $19,000 in Windsor Village Park, $4.6 million worth of renovation for the Herman Park Golf Course, and over $14,000 in matching funds for a total of $28,000 for Dunleavy Park, which has been renamed Chew Park. In housing and community development, we've secured renovation grant monies for the ensemble, over $500,000. That's complete now, of $1 million project for community development block grant funds. That is the only ensemble theater. That's the only theater in the United States on Main Street that is part of a community-based theater, the ensemble theater, a major function. The Third Ward CDC, done in cooperation with Texas Southern University, the Grambling Grove Apartments, $1.9 million for 12 two-story multifamily units. Again, this is student and affordable housing for families. SHAPE Community Center, which has been the foundation center for community-based work for now over 32 years, $600,000 for neighborhood facilities renovation. SEHA, which is another community-based organization, $250,000. Simmons Gardens, $2.2 million for 120 units of senior and multifamily units of a $7 million project. Eastside Village, this is a project by Homer Street Baptist Church, $1.3 million, $492,000 in grant, and $800,000 in revolving loans at 0% interest to produce 123 units of single-family housing in the Third Ward through the CDC developed by the church. Cullen Missionary Baptist Church, 54 affordable housing units. That's out Cullen Road near Reed. $725,000. We amended the city budget. This was my second year on council, to include a $900,000 budget amendment for the elderly home repair program. This is so that poor senior citizens who are living in dilapidated housing can have their homes, in fact, renovated out of this almost $1 million budget amendment. $459,000 for the Anna Dupree Senior Citizen Center, $240,000 in renovation grant monies for the Bering Home Dental Clinic, and 2 home buying seminars. In these home buying seminars, we were able to pre-qualify hundreds of prospective home buyers to receive the $5,000 down payment and closing cost grant available to these prospective low and moderate income families. We also have, of course, in 1997 and 98, the expansion of the old Spanish Trail Alameda Corridor tax increment reinvestment zone that stimulated some $200 million in new business development. Additionally, of course, I've spoken about the chair of the HIV/AIDS task force, the working out of the issues facing Freedmanstown in 4th Ward, 255 units of affordable housing, 105 units of multifamily by the Housing Authority, 100 rental units, 50 units of historic units in the 4th Ward, international trade, the passage of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, which we were a major part of in the Congress, signed by President Clinton, the convening of the Corporate Council of Africa in Houston. This pumped $7 million into the local economy, and we were the leadership of the delegation that brought that major summit to Houston, Texas. And as I said, police and fire, we have over $2,200,000 of new equipment, new fire equipment in District D. We secured funding for the Reed Road Houston Police Department storefront, stations 25, 33, 35, 46, 55, 59, and 80, all new equipment and renovation of those fire stations. It kind of goes on and on and on. I don't want to mention we'd be here all day and all night, but I wanted to basically explain that there are very specific and direct projects and funding that has been secured, programs that have been completed, and an infrastructure laid for the next city council member to carry on and build upon that for the renovation and development of District D, while at the same time we continue with our duties and responsibilities as Mayor Pro Tem to work to build consensus and build the entire city.